It all started 3 years ago when I had my very first internship, and I was casually reading any documentation I could get my hands on, so I had an answer for the dreaded, "So, what do you do here?" question that I kept getting inside and outside of work. But as I was scouring the documents and sitting in meetings, I kept noticing that people used weird words like dog fooding and bricked and other terms that I was unfamiliar with. At first I was like, this is very strange. Why are we feeding dogs things in the office? But after extensive research, I came to learn that these are just tech jargon that people use to describe certain things. Let's go ahead and jump right into the very first term, which is bricked. Now, this isn't some thinly veiled The Middle reference, even though I love that show. This is what happens to hardware after it stops working. So it basically converts from expensive hardware into a very expensive brick. You can throw it through windows, use it to build a house. If you're a hippie, you can even use it as a very expensive paperweight. Now, this is just the term that people use when hardware converts into an unusable box. Moving into potentially the most problematic tech jargon on this list, and that is dog fooding. When your coworkers say dog fooding, they don't mean that they're literally going to be putting code in dog food, as the term may sound. It's really just another testing phase in production, which is when the product is done, we're going to feed it to our own employees before we give it to paying customers. Basically, we just want our engineers to find all the buttons that don't work, test out the UI, see how the product actually feels when you're using it versus just when you've made the product. Moving into tech debt, which, by the way, no one is going to try to argue is good debt. Tech debt is basically the emotional baggage that your application is forced to carry around when you push less than ideal code. Basically, you leave it there hoping somebody else will fix it, and then nobody fixes it, and inevitably the application crashes and causes a code red. So we do not like tech debt. When your mentor comes up behind you and says, looks like you're writing some pretty good code debt, that's not a good thing. It means that you're writing code that is buggy or difficult to test or difficult to understand. So tech debt is basically when you're pushing less than ideal code that in the future will probably cause bugs. Now, tech debt is generally categorized into two categories. The we're just gonna let it sit, it's not hurting anyone, we don't have time to fix it, and the yeah, we'll get to that later, we're gonna make a ticket, it'll get fixed, which inevitably ends up in the very first category. Moving into PR and MR. Now, if you're a gym rat like me, the first time you hear PR in the office, you're gonna get really excited thinking that your coworker is talking about bench press or something. No. In the office, a PR is a pull request. It's not a personal record. So basically what I mean by a pull request, it's when you're trying to merge your code into the master branch or into another branch. This is the term people use in the free version of GitHub for version control. Whereas on the other hand, what about Mr. MR over there? Mr. MR is basically the same thing as a pull request, except it's called a merge request, and it's generally used in the GitHub premium version, also known as GitLab. Now, I've seen these terms used interchangeably. If you have a different experience with it, let me know, but this is what I've seen in general. Now, moving into my favorite term, and probably the most confusing, I was looking at some old code with my coworker in a code review, and this is code that I had written, and they looked at it and said, wow, it looks like you've really been shaving the yak with this one. And I was very, very confused. At first I was like, okay, maybe this is like a term that they use that I haven't heard of, and people shave a lot of yaks where you grew up. I'm not really sure. It seemed very strange that they were making a comparison with yak shaving. Like when someone says it's as easy as riding a bike, a lot of people have ridden bikes. Perhaps a lot of people have shaved yaks around where this person grew up. So at first I was like, okay, this is interesting, cultural difference. And after reading a 20-page document on yak shaving, I came to the conclusion that shaving the yak is actually a tech jargon term. It basically means having to complete a bunch of small tasks before you can move on to the next big thing in the production cycle or in your software development. I hope you found this video helpful and it'll help you better understand your coworkers and the office in general. If there's any tech terms I missed in this video, make sure to leave those down in the comments below, and it just might show up in the next video. Also, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to all of my subscribers. We're almost at 500 now, which is just so insane. Thank you all so much for your support. It really means a lot, especially when I read a comment at the end of the day. It just makes me so happy. So thank you all so much.